Hey there, Lead the Team Nation. Welcome back. I've got a fun one coming your way today with Dr. Janet On, who is the President and Chief Behavioral Science Officer at MindGym. She leverages her behavioral science expertise to lead MindGym's global product innovation, research and development, and digital solutions expansion, including topics such as how leaders can effectively manage teams in a hybrid workplace, organizational responsibility for individual employee well-being, management and leadership development, and of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion. She's a sought after speaker on subject matter and subject matter expert at both academic and industry conferences. Her work has been featured in various media outlets such as Axios, Women's Health Magazine, NPR, American Educator, Business Insider, CBS, and USA Today. And just a cherry on top of all of her amazing credentials here, she has a bachelor's degree from Barnard College and a master's and PhD from NYU. Janet, welcome to Lead the Team.
Hi, Ben. So happy to be here.
Man, and there are even more credentials I didn't even cover. This is like, but I guess when you're known as Dr. Janet On, and you have a Chief Behavioral Science Officer in addition to President title, there's a lot
It's
of
heavy. I
credentialing.
know it's heavy. There's a lot going on
There's
there.
a lot going
on.
So there are so many cool things about your background. It's going to be hard to narrow the scope a little bit, but one of the things that jumped out at me in reviewing is you did work under Dr. Carol Dweck's $2.5 million National Science Foundation grant. We talk a lot about like growth mindset. I'm a big fan of Carol Dweck. What did you discover, and what was it like working with that?
Yeah, that research again was a line of growth mindset, but with a twist. So that one was really fun. So that was my postdoc, post my PhD, and that one was with a partnership at Columbia and Carol Dweck's lab. And it was about really understanding how scientists struggled and how that helps with their persistence. The struggle stories of scientists make for better motivators and modeling growth mindset, essentially. So how failures really allow for you to, how that plays a role in growth mindset, essentially. It was a really cool piece of work. So we found that in our experiments that if you share struggle stories and stories of failure, how that actually transmits growth mindset into your students, into the learners of the classroom. And how and why that does is because of the sense of transparency. It's a sense of students that they felt like they could really relate to even scientists like Albert Einstein. Like, so they normally, you know, like with scientists, it's this fixated mindset of you're a genius, I'm not a genius, so I'm not a scientist. That's a vicious cycle. But when Albert Einstein shows that he actually struggled to get to where he was in creating relativity theory, the students actually feel like, you know what, it's okay to struggle. It's okay to not always get it immediately. I can work through it. And that was the whole research line. Yeah.
So powerful. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to take that to every leader listening right now.
Yeah.
Like, are you sharing your struggle stories? Because leaders
Yeah.
get put up on this pedestal and
Absolutely.
they seem unrelatable sometimes. Well, unless I'm really winning at everything, if I'm batting a perfect percentage every time, I can't, I don't even want to, like, I can't even relate to my boss or a leader. And by sharing your struggle stories, it allows them to develop more of a growth mindset. That's really interesting.
It's powerful. But I'd say, you know, with leaders, so we try to translate this in organizational leaders, but the first thing you get with organizational leaders is resistance, because they don't want to be exploited or exposed. Once you know my mistakes, then you're going to think less of me. That's the assumption.
Think I'm weak. You think I'm not a leader worth following.
I'm not able to hack it, right? I can't do the job. But it's what I love about that research we did with Carol Dweck was if you balance not just the emphasis on struggle, but the action sequences you took to overcome the struggle, that's what makes for a great story. So it's not just about sitting there, about, you know, kind of having a victim's mindset of all these terrible things happened and I failed at everything and I'm the worst. It's not that. It's I struggled and I failed, but what are the action sequences I followed to overcome? That's what people are looking for.
All right. So making that personal now, what is your favorite leader struggle or personal struggle story to share with your team?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say one of the first struggles of being this heavy label carrier of just chief science officer and president and all this was a strong sense of imposter syndrome.
Mm.
By nature, I'm an academic. I didn't come from 14 different executive leadership roles prior to my life here. I'm an academic. I was on a tenure track, professor, professor hat, and I didn't know politics. I don't know what industry politics are like. I'm like, look, I just came to educate
Uh,
people and
mm,
train students. What is this concept of revenue growth and profit, and what is all
mm,
this, right? It's a new language. But when you take on these heavy titles of chief science officer and then president at that, that's a commercial hat and that's a product hat and that's a lead science hat. There's a lot of weight of responsibility that comes with that when you feel, wow, I didn't come ready for this. I didn't come ready for this. But I think that, and I have to say, Ben, I'm not done with the struggle. I'm still going through it. I'm still quite figuring it out. And I'm still leading. But I'd say the one thing about my leadership is I always lead with a lot of integrity. So
mm.
what you see is what you get. I'm not trying to pull a fast one. I think it's because I don't know how to play the leadership games. Really, like I think it's just I don't know how to
You
do the
haven't been taught all
politics.
the games that
I
leaders
haven't been
play.
taught a bit about really how to manage in
White
the right
cast.
way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just I just
Yeah.
kind of lead like, hey, here's where we're at, and here and what's the solution to getting out.
So,
And that's as simple as it gets. Yeah,
so when your team that
yeah,
you lead here's what you just shared with us,
yeah.
what I'm sure they probably heard a version of it, but say they're hearing it for the first time, what is your hope that that will instill in their mindset?
Don't be afraid.
Mm,
Because just because you didn't feel you had all the right equipment doesn't mean you're not capable. And I think I come from the background of academia. Plus, I'm not, I don't have all the kind of equipment of what it looks like to be a leader, maybe
mm,
racially or gender wise or whatever, what have you. It's just don't be afraid to try
mm.
and give it your best. And I think that's what I definitely have going for myself. And that's what I hope they can go for. It's the risk of just trying. Just try before you can say you can't.
Sounds like a growth mindset, and that Carol Dweck would probably give you a high five right now.
Possibly, yes. I would hope as a student she would.
Well, all right. So I was going to go down a different road, but while we're on this, um, MindGym, listeners may or may not know MindGym,
Mhm.
but it's consulting, it's leadership development,
Yeah.
but with a real focus on the science side of it.
Yes.
What, in just a nutshell, what do leaders listening today need to know primarily about MindGym and why it's a little different there?
Yeah. Um, I'd say with MindGym is there are so many organizational problems related to human capital management, right? That's the broad basis of it. So
Mm-hmm.
performance issues, diversity, equity, inclusion concerns. Where do you start? Where do you start with even trying to solve those really complicated problems? MindGym would say it starts with science.
Mm-hmm.
Start with science. So I'd say that the MindGym mission is we help people change, think, and behave differently so they can get more out of life and give back to others. What that means to me is help you work more efficiently at work so then you could have more capacity at life.
Mm-hmm.
That's MindGym.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, and so when you end a full day of work, you get home and you're like, I'm exhausted. I'm just depleted. I have nothing else to give. And yet you have two kids watching you. You have your spouse. You have all the chores. You have dinner to get ready. Well, where do you get that extra energy? Well, MindGym helps you not lose that capacity during the workday, so you can give back more to your
Mm-hmm.
life and to others around you. That's MindGym, and it uses science as a basis for doing that.
Well, cool. Well, it's nice to start with the science because it probably gives people, especially leaders of organizations, warm fuzzies to start in science. But I suspect you mentioned family, it has a real
Yeah.
soft side to it.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
kind of speaks to both sides of your mind.
Absolutely.
For the maximum gym workout, the mind gym.
That's right.
Both sides. Well, all right. So
Exactly.
maybe we'll come back around to that, but your background's so darn interesting. I want to dig into this. As a first generation college student from an immigrant family, maybe share with us a little bit about what that was like and how has that shaped your own
Yeah.
personal leadership journey?
I think, well, so my parents immigrated from South Korea, and I was born and raised in New York. And they were highly educated professionals in South Korea. My dad was a veterinarian and my mom was a chemist, but they graduated from Seoul National University, like, kind of the Harvard equivalent of Korea. But when they came, they lost all of that. It didn't transfer. So they had to start from scratch when they came. And there was a lot of racial discrimination we went through, poverty we went through as a family. My dad was a yellow cab driver in Manhattan for about 40 years. And it was not, it wasn't easy because we didn't have models and we didn't have a network. So all our family was in Korea. Nobody was here. So we had to really start from scratch. And it was a story of struggle, I'd say. So I'd say in terms of how it influenced me was I had to find resources that didn't exist and I still had to make it out. So I didn't have social networks to teach me this is how you apply to college or this is why college is important. Everything, there was no tacit or implicit way of learning. Everything was effortful and had to be done intentionally. You're not surrounded, even my parents are not English speakers. So I wasn't even surrounded by language that could make it easier. None of it was easy. And then the resources were lacking. So how do you figure that out when there's not a lot of resources around? And I think that to me always taught me how to be incredibly resourceful and think outside of the box and never feel I can't. I never had a moment of this is impossible, even though it looked it, always tried anyway.
Wow. So in that poverty and that huge challenge and that huge transition, was there something that your parents said to
Yeah.
you or or your parents had heard? What was it that
Yeah.
allowed them to tap into
Yeah.
that level of resourcefulness?
Yeah. There were two things my parents both said pretty regularly to me, and it sticks with me. My dad kept saying to me, it is so simple. There's nothing like I'm going to say that you're going to be like, oh my God, never heard this in anyone's lives. I mean, it's so simple, but what it meant was different. So my dad kept saying, set high goals, and that was because and because as a PhD researcher of goals and mindset and motivation, I learned later setting high goals, what it does is it actually instills faith in yourself. It's a sense of self-efficacy. Like you believe you can set high goals. And so my dad was telling me to do it because he believed I could, but he wanted, most importantly, for me to believe I could. So he wanted to instill confidence early on. And
So,
then my
so just
mom,
by
yeah,
setting a higher goal, you're somehow cementing that belief that it's attainable and that
you
you
can't
can do it.
exactly, but you have to have so confidence comes with being able to achieve goals, right? So you have to keep setting them as you keep achieving them. So that's the cycle. Every time you succeed at doing so, you keep setting another one, and that was that cycle of kind of wins. It's a cycle of wins, right? And my mom kept one thing, I would say, I mean, maybe not too regularly, but regularly enough, I would just say it's just too hard and I can't. And I would kind of say to her, why does dad keep telling me to set high goals? It's impossible. And I would pit them against each other. I'm like, it's impossible. Why does he say that? And my mom just kept saying, and it was always in Korean, but it translates to wait till the end. Because in her eyes, it was just have the faith that if you keep this path, you'll get there. It's a story of persistence. It's a
Mm,
story of perseverance. And that to me, with those two, I kind of kept moving despite
beautiful.
all the kind of challenges and difficulties faced each time.
Wow. I love it. and they are simple, but they're memorable,
They're very simple.
and you
Yeah.
can apply them. I think feel like sometimes we get so darn complicated on our sayings, or
I
whatever.
know.
We did because they just feel good to say, but we can't actually, but they're not actually actionable. And the idea of setting high goals, and I like that too, because a lot of times people are so focused on the goals that they're maybe setting at work through their annual review process or with their team,
Yeah.
but they don't always think about their own career goals and and personal goals. And so that can be a great way to round that out and wait till
Mhm.
the end, just to keep going. Uh, a friend of mine loves to say, like you don't get beat unless you give up. If you just keep starting,
Mm,
if you or just
yeah.
keep continuing and you keep pressing on and you
Yeah.
don't stop, then you don't lose. So what
Absolutely.
but I can definitely understand how those two were so helpful in developing that
Yeah.
inner resilience and resourcefulness
Absolutely.
that you mentioned. Now you also say that you're an extreme introvert that presents as an extrovert.
Yes.
And so I'm an extreme extrovert that presents as an extreme extrovert. My wife's an introvert, and sometimes it creates some interesting situations and
Yes,
conversations.
I bet.
Uh,
Because
what's your? So I'm really curious about this. So tell me about this. Yeah.
I think well again, I'm an academic by nature. I'm not, the way I am. I like to study. I like to read. I like to think. I like to reflect. I observe a lot and I analyze a lot. But that takes time for things to, and I need quiet to do that.
Mm,
But when there's a lot of people interaction, it drains me. It's actually really draining. So I always tell my husband I have a social quota. Like we're done for like we hung out with friends this weekend. I'm not seeing anyone for 6 months. Like that's how extreme it is. And he's like, and he's an extreme extrovert. He's like,
mm,
no, we got to meet up with the, this family and that family. And I'm like, no, 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 6 months. Like I gotta regenerate myself. Like I'm so tired. But I present myself as an extrovert. I mean, my roles suggest I have to be. When you're leading teams, there's a level of you have to learn how to deal with people on the public forum, right? You have
mm.
to know how to engage at that level. But in the end, I just want to read and for things to be quiet and be left alone. I know it sounds terrible, but
So,
that's really
does it? Well, to me, understanding introverts a little bit, it does not sound terrible. Uh, it is a different way of renewing our. You have to understand how we renew ourselves. And your husband's an extrovert like
absolutely.
me. We know that being around people often gives us a boost of energy that
Yeah.
helps us with our more quiet time. And it's often the reverse. If you're introvert, you you appreciate that quiet time, and it helps you
Yeah.
amp up for those times when you need to be more
That's
extroverted.
absolutely right.
What is and it's interesting though. I think the challenge is there's the personal side of it, but as a president, people need to hear from you. They need to
Yeah.
see you, and you probably feel that like that's part of the role. What's your approach or process to bringing that communication side, that
Yeah.
connection side, but also making sure that you have the energy that you need to keep going?
I think so. As president, they need to hear, but what they need to hear is help you solve a problem.
Hmm.
So they don't need you to do, you know, kind of the confetti work and the excitement. Like that's nice, and I can present that when in that experience.
Mhm.
They want the energy, they want the enthusiasm. That's all nice, but what they really want is help me solve this problem. At this level, you don't get the problems that are just, what they can solve. At this problem, things got escalated for a reason. That's what people need. They want to know what's the
Mhm.
future
Mhm.
strategy, what's the 3 5 year roadmap, what's the business plan, and how do I present that to clients? And
Mhm.
clients have a really tricky way of, the clients have really tricky problems. So what's this one going to look like? That's what they want. They want you to help them solve a problem. And I think the way I interact with that is exactly give me the time, like give me the information I need. So I don't need
Mhm.
you to prep me for an hour on this problem. Send me over the document so I can read. Let me read, give me the time. Give me the time to read what is the problem, who is the client, what is your problem, who, who are the people concerned, involved, what are the, kind of contingencies on this, and then let me think about it, and then let's meet. That's how I like to do it. So when it comes to tricky problem cases or their cases, give me what I need to review first. So I understand, I can think, I can plug it into kind of my mindset of, oh, that's how it could affect this. Let me kind of think it through on my own before we come together and kind of, you challenge me on the spot what to figure out. And I could do that too, but I'll be a better thinker for you if you give me the moment just to think on my own.
Jenna, I love that. And it's your example is so important, I think, for our listeners to plug into, because first of all, you've done the work to know that you are an introvert. It's amazing to me. I mean, it's like you and I throw it around like everyone knows about this about themselves, but they don't always have that familiarity. So understand, and then begin to engineer your workday so you can perform at a high level. And
exactly.
I take it you are not a verbal processor.
No,
right?
Not for all. Yeah,
Right.
not for some problems, not all. Yeah.
Maybe some problems, but you prefer to, like, you get the emails, you get the data, you're like pouring through it. Then you
Exactly. Let
show
me
up
read.
prepared.
Let me think.
Love it.
Exactly.
Love it. And some
Exactly.
people do it. I do that some, but as you can probably tell from a podcasting standpoint, I'm a verbal processor. And sometimes this annoys the absolute snot out of my family. They don't process information.
Well,
And they certainly don't want to hear me processing it. That's why I'm on podcasting. That's why I have a team of people that are on my team that do it
you know
differently.
what it is, Ben? It's because it's the pressure I'm trying to relieve to solve in the moment when I just need the spotlight off to think on my own for about 10 seconds. So when I'm a verbal processor, or if it wants to be done verbally, I feel the pressure to show up when I'm distracted by it. I need the pressure off to think. And sometimes sometimes you just have to have the pressure. It just is the way it is. But for the most part, give me the agenda, give me the notes, give me the debrief, let me think. And that is annoying for some people because it forces them to work a bit harder before you get in the room. But this is kind of the way I have to go about some of it, not all. Yeah.
Do you, how have you communicated that to the organization or to your team? What do you have I know some leaders have a SOP for working with me, and some people say, well, Ben, that is way too egotistical. Like, I do that. We have someone join the team. I'm like, this is how it works best. You get the best out of me. This is how we operate. But how do you go about communicating that?
I mean, logistically, sometimes it's just easier through my EA to kind of schedule that. And then up front, she would kind of chase Janet, block time to review the notes, please send it over. But that's what I shared. But I think I'm pretty clear too, about next time. Let's say we didn't do that. We just kind of did it on the spot. But I didn't feel like I gave the best answer. Next time I'd say, let's come prepared this way. And so I would just say next time, and then they kind of get used to working with me. I think honestly, Ben, it takes a bit of time for people to learn how to work together, including myself, so it takes time for me to work with my team and what works best. So we just kind of try in that way.
Yeah, I just love that. I just think it's such an important thing for leaders to consider. Your team has their work preferences. They may not even be aware of what they are.
Yes.
And to be patient and to go about this process and really start to find that cohesion. It also means that when you work with someone for a while and you figure out each other's work style and it's going so darn well, the cost of turnover,
I know,
can be more expensive
it's
than
painful.
people even realize.
Yes.
How are you thinking about employee turnover and the cost these days?
I mean, Ben, that's like the number one problem with our clients, and even we experience that pain, right? I think it's gotten a lot better than the past year where we had the great resignation or the great reshuffle, call it whatever it was, but it's still there, right? There's residual pain of it. I'd say for me personally, I mean, this is less of me talking to clients. This is me just as a leader. If you don't have your people, it's hard to really work through it. If you don't have that loyalty, if you don't have, it's not always about compensation. It's not always, that matters. Money matters on the table, but you have to have that loyalty. People need to want to follow you, not
Mm.
because they have to, not because they're paid to, not because, they have no other choice or they're scared. They can't follow you out of fear or coercion. They have to want to.
Mm.
And I think breeding that sense of loyalty is what I try to do. And how do you do that? I mean, that's with, again, that win-win cycle. I have to win their trust. They have to see me, but I have to be honest when I'm not making all the
Mm.
best decisions, and acknowledge it, but try, to make the better one next time. And I think that's what people respect over and over again. And yeah, so that's just, it's not easy. Turnover is not easy. And it is a reality, but people matter so much. If you can't run that ship without really amazing, loyal employees.
Yeah, I had this conversation with someone the other day, and loyalty came up. And they were saying how they don't really feel loyal to the company, but that they felt like their boss had gone out of their way so much for them that they felt loyal to the individual. And I thought that was really, I don't think the person meant to drop a profound
Yeah,
nugget on me at the time, but I
yeah.
was like, there's something to that. How do you think about loyalty from an organization standpoint versus a president
An
standpoint?
individual, like,
Mhm.
well, I think as a president, though, I represent the organization, right? So I am a representation of that brand.
Mhm.
But I think so. You certainly, as president, I can't go against the brand. Like, you can't be separate from it. But I'd say as a president, you could help garner that loyalty a bit more, right, and make it easier for the brand. So I view it as highly, again, MindGym's mission to give back more to others, by so you could get more out of life. It's if you get more out of life and you give back. That is a brand I personally believe, and I think people believe that about me.
Mm.
And so when you can stand for a brand that you feel bought into, it's much easier to then help the brand, right? And I think that when people feels disingenuous, that you're just doing the president
Mhm.
hat and the role, but you don't quite believe in the brand, they can tell people are not stupid. People are quite smart.
Like, yeah,
They can
it's
tell
not,
when you're
when it's
not
not
authentic.
congruent, they can tell.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think for me, that's easy at MindGym, but I can certainly see if it isn't as easy, how hard that is to grow the brand loyalty or just the company loyalty in general.
What's the one trait you wish you could instill in every employee, and why is it so important?
Um, the one trait, it's I'd say taking that sense of start with yes,
Hmm.
start with yes. Um, I think when I think about where I am at MindGym, and my goal at MindGym is to make it the most innovative place in the world, I have to think outside of the box for it. And I have to think of something,
Hmm.
stuff that doesn't make sense sometimes, to try that, or stuff that's hard to get it there. I want my employees to start with yes before you say, no, that we can't do that. And that's not going to work. And that's
Or,
just
or
that
that's
that's
out
going to
of scope
fail,
on this
or
project.
that's out of scope, or I can't, or
Yeah.
that's too expensive. Before you tell me all the reasons why we can't, try to imagine how we can.
Hmm.
Start with yes. And then let's try before you say all the roadblocks of no's. That's one piece I would love, because then I feel we can move it. We can move that needle faster if I started with a yes.
So you just dropped a big vision statement on me. You said the most innovative place in the world.
Yes, yes,
Now,
that's
that
right.
sounds like a fun place to be.
Absolutely.
Also a little
It's mind
terrifying.
gym, I mean,
A little terrifying, but
yeah.
and exciting. So I mean, that's a huge, bold vision.
That's right.
And what are you doing as a leader to instill, or I guess communicate that vision in a way that doesn't just blow people's minds inside the organization,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. I
still
think,
keeps them striving for
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, Ben, the dynamic, and I do that at MindGym, and I say that more regularly than you think. But it's how I do that. I think it scares people when it's too broad. So scare. So the thing about being the most innovative place in the world, dropping visions like that, it's fun because it's inspiring. Like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? And how big can it be? And what does it look like? It's inspiring, but at the same time, you just said there's this fear associated with it, like, oh God, that's so big. That's when it's too broad. So how do I break down the innovation in ways that are digestible, in ways that you feel is doable, optimal, that is operationalized? That's my job, right? To bring you on, but to still keep the excitement of, but it's going to be the most innovative place in the world, right? And it's got to look achievable. It's got to look achievable, or else it looks scary.
Set
It
high
looks
goals.
scary. Exactly. There you go. There you go. Goes
You're
back to
like,
that.
Dad, I'm doing
Full
you
circle.
proud. You set high goals. I'm setting becoming the most innovative place in the world, which sounds good. It sounds good. So yeah, you're breaking it down into tangible things for the people. Like,
That's
okay,
right.
this is our path
These are our steps.
to, to
Yeah.
get there. And
Yeah.
what kind of response are you getting from that?
You get the mixture, you get the mix. I mean, for the most part, I'd say one of the things at MindGym we do really well is energize behind our culture's purpose.
Hmm.
That is number
Mhm.
one, where, in these times of turnover, Ben, why people leave outside of comp and salary and pay rises is lack of purpose.
Hmm.
That's what people are leaving for. They don't feel connected. They don't see the purpose. They don't feel like, well, what's the point? What's the grand? And that's where we win at MindGym, purpose all the time. We get that right really well. So you have that group of people who are like, I get the purpose. But I think I still have to work there along with our other leaders on how to get there, the steps. We paint the pictures, but it has to keep getting clearer. And then that's my job. And that's what every day I have to get better at.
Cool. No, that's a great advice for leaders. I mean, no one's gonna leave MindGym for lack of purpose when
No.
you're communicating that vision. And I like the fact that you're still communicating it every day. It's part of you see it's part of your role. I think leaders, when sometimes they cast a vision, they forget they have to keep repeating it over and over because the mundane and the daily grind, people forget about it,
Yeah.
and it becomes just a job. And so giving
I
them that
think
higher
people need
purpose.
exactly, it's the clear vision, right? And it's a consistent vision. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's much easier for leaders to be consistent and have clarity if you personally believe in it. It goes back to what you really identify with. And I think that's really much easier to do if you believe in it yourself.
What are 3 success strategies that every employee needs to be keeping in mind right now?
Oh gosh, Ben, these are great questions. I think always be ready to ask questions where you don't feel clear, like be ready to challenge. So employees should be asked to do that, because how do you get to the most innovative place if your people are not challenging? So I think challenge is one. I think another one is, in this time more than others, be patient when it's not right. I think there's a lot of things leaders are trying to do and they're under a lot of stress to do, but be patient, reasonably patient, reasonably. Um, and then, and then three, take initiative. What can you do to help make that vision clearer and how to make it better? What can you do? What is your personal initiative in this? And then that ownership is something all employees can do and take.
So starting to wind the interview up today,
Yeah.
Janet, what's your parting thought for our listeners?
Um, I think we're all united right now in times of struggle. It's a strange time. We have weird economic things, downturns, and the world seems a bit fuzzy in many ways. But I'd say the parting piece I'd say here is um, just stay the course. Stay the course. Do the right thing by your people. Do the right thing that has integrity for yourself, and stay the course. That's what I would say.
And stay the course sounds a lot like mom's advice to
Wait
wait to
till
the end.
keep waiting. Yes. I changed it up, it's got to sound a
I
little
love
different.
it.
It can't be completely plagiarized, Ben.
Sorry, mom, you got your credit in. Uh, nah, but it was, yeah, such a cool interview, and I love when we get to come full circle on it because it has such a nice connection and sort of ties it up. Janet, thank you for coming on and providing such a cool perspective on this, and can't wait to see what you and your team do next.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.